So everybody, it's Frito here for Your Overwatch. Today we're going to be taking a look at the new experimental card patch notes that just went onto the live game. Some of these dealing with some really top tier heroes, so let's take a look at what they did. I've been saying for a while that Baptiste is the strongest character in the game, so let's see how they went to nerf him. Some of these changes I really like the direction of, not sure if they're enough though. The first one is that the healing projectile explosion has now been reduced from 60 healing a shot, which felt really high, down to 50. With an individual target, you're not going to see this as a nerf, because if you hit the target directly, you actually heal more than before. So they buffed one aspect of his healing in a cool way, because this means that the hard to hit shots of directly hitting your teammate heals more than before, but healing an AoE deals considerably less. So 10 less per shot means that healing two teammates like this means I'm healing 20 less per shot than before. That could go all the way up to 50 less per shot, and that all ripple effects into how much ultimate you gain and how much overall tankiness your team's going to have based on being able to heal them all in an AoE. I think this is actually an awesome change, at least in philosophy. I don't know if it's enough necessarily, but the cool thing what this is going to do is that your tanks, who I think are the easiest characters to hit with this shot, are going to get more healing than before with BAP, because you can hit your Reinhardt multiple times very easily. But your squishies that would be kind of just more or less in the vicinity of this AoE are going to reach those break points where they die sooner easier, because every like 10 bit of health matters if it's like one duel beats them or not. Like, it's a big difference to me, and as well just getting ult faster is going to matter. So this looks subtle on paper, but I think it's like a really cool change that I'm a big fan of. Maybe not enough, in combination with the fact that they haven't really changed immortality fields that much. The new change makes it so that in immortality fields, your teammates can now go all the way down to 10% health, as opposed to it used to be 20%. I actually think this might be the lowest impact nerf they could do, because having a distinct cap where you cannot die at all at the lower end, how much health, I'm not sure matters too much, considering you can still AoE heal them anyway in that time or get your cooldowns off. It's the fact that it creates this barrier that means everybody inside it can't die. All the biggest burst abilities in the game you're now immune from, so I don't think that changes the personality of it at all, as opposed to the AoE healing, right? Where like, I think that's actually a much bigger deal than the E. Though we should keep in mind that with your AoE healing worse, that means the play of saving your team with Immortality Field, then healing up a bunch of them together is a little bit weaker than before. So, for example, a character like Winston might be able to find the targets just weak enough after the use of Immortality Field to finish them off as BAP is scurrying to try to save them. And that might make for some interesting plays, such as I need to direct hit your teammate with the nade to save them rather than just hitting on the floor. So at the very least, regardless of where the power lands of this, I think the play style that it incentivizes is way more interesting than before, incentivizing you to actually directly hit your teammate rather than just like spam at your feet and APM spamming. This is going to matter because one of BAP's biggest plays is being able to APM spam, where you try to sneak in shots in between your heals. And if you have to hit this heal shot to the body instead of just to the floor, that's actually like a huge skill cap raise, which I think is awesome for the character. I think the mechanics of BAP are just, they feel great. It's just playing against them often doesn't. Now, this next change is one that I think they were interested in doing after running that experimental card for April Fools, and found a change that they're like, hey, that actually seems like a reasonable play that D.Va could make, and put it into the live game. What they now have done is you can kill most squishy targets, unless they have a little bit of extra health for some reason, with the mech call down, insta-killing a squishy like that. And to be honest, it seems like a somewhat reasonable play for D.Va to be able to make, though you may dislike this if you play a squishy and prefer the game to be more just like a shooter instead of these MOBA abilities being able to insta-kill you. I just find it cool because it's got a cool logo in the kill feed, so it seems like a reasonable thing to fear, and perhaps gives D.Va a big big play to make when the enemy is trying to stagger her. Leaving the baby D.Va in baby D.Va form for longer typically is a way that you can kind of mess with the enemy's regroups. But whereas now, if she has a chance to insta-kill you, if she works up to that next mech, that's kind of a cool play that I'm glad D.Va can make. But that's just one man's opinion. Let me know your thoughts on this one, which I think is going to be a bit controversial, in the comment section down below. The next nerf is to Echo, where now they are addressing her ability to get an extra life when she casts Duplicate, which already is in itself an entirely new life. So what I mean is, one thing that makes Echo really grindy of a character, particularly in the ult fight, is that you get on low health, then you come around in order to hit Duplicate, get everything from Duplicate, right? All the cooldowns ready, and I'm gonna swing around and get an Earth Shatter and make my big play of the gameplay. And then by the time you come out of this, in the live version of the game, you get everything back again. So then you can nuke and use your cooldowns and have extra life. But whereas now, when you come out of Duplicate form, I'm gonna be as weak as I was in terms of HP as I was originally when I did go into Dupe. Now that you know, when she comes out of Duplicate, if she was lower than 100 originally, she'll be returned back to that. Or if she had more than that, like 150, she'll return to 150 or whatever was more than 100. That's how the patch note reads. If you go into Duplicate with less than 100, you will return with 100. So it's a small refresh to your health. Or if it's in between 100 and 200, you'll get whatever was left at that time. Seems pretty fair, and I think is a good direction for the nerf to go. Allowing for those windows for gameplay opportunity is good to me, as opposed to my character just can do more things than you. The limitations adds texture to the gameplay, because then you now know you can outplay Echo in this state. However, I will nerf that too much, and then Echo might just be a weaker version of other flex DPS, but we had that problem anyway. Well, that's not going away regardless of what they change. AoE healing in Overwatch may have gotten a nerf from Baptiste's side of things, but it actually got buffed with Moira, and this goes for both the Biotic and Healing Orb, but the cooldown has been reduced down to 8 seconds. It used to be 10. Spam out your ability to really charge Coalescence really fast. Even just with this Healing Orb and little healing, you can see it's going up pretty quickly. So the Death Ball playstyle, I think, got a big buff with Moira's ability to sustain it, but it wasn't really that strong from the Moira point of view, in my opinion. Like, if you're a really high tier full team, you could play around it. I think now that you can spam it a bit more, that does go up, but I tend to doubt that Moira's power is going to burst significantly. However, whenever you change these numbers, it modifies when a lot of things come online, and maybe this means you get Cole fast enough that it is going to be quite a fight turner and allow you to hold the tempo and really swing momentum early. Like, if you get a fast ult pretty easily in the game and you just spam it out, like, it can dictate the rest of the gameplay and the balance and how everything works. So there's a chance that this Moira buff does do that. So a little concerned that this is too good of a buff, perhaps. Like, I'm not a fan of AoE healing being incredibly strong and forgiving, but I suppose if she's the one character that can do it, maybe it's a little bit more fair. Next change is to the horse, of course, Orisa, who, remember, got a bit of a nerf with the range of her Halt, which turned out to really make it difficult to land. So, like, the range of it used to be incredibly forgiving. Now it's got to be around that distance. We're going to try to test to see how far we actually can get it to connect, but you can see here that the cooldown is now at 6 seconds. Way too far for that. That's 10 meters away. But at 6 seconds, that means it's going to be the same duration as a Winston leap. So 1-to-1, you could hold it in order to counteract him, but the range of this is about 4 meters, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So it can pull from there, but with everybody's ability to react to this, with how slow it goes and how predictable it is when you use it, it became really difficult to make the huge Halt plays. It does seem kind of fair to me for Orisa to be able to spam this out a little bit more frequently, because it's really her only interesting play, but it was obnoxiously overpowered before, so it's kind of a give and take with that, whether the player base enjoys it or not. People are really mixed on this character, and I can see both sides because she's one of my better characters, but at the same time, she's incredibly obnoxious. So it's hard to win from Blizzard's point of view. However, I think something to keep in mind is like the state of the rest of the changes of the other tanks and healers that they're changing, of how this is going to affect Orisa. Keep in mind, Orisa's best teammate from a support is Baptiste, who in a way perhaps got better with Orisa comps. And the reason I say that is because I think Brawl's counters typically are the off angles or AoE damage, and if Baptiste could out heal AoE damage too easily, well, that was kind of a problem. Whereas Orisa has sort of a weird place, like full out bunker comp doesn't exist anymore, but she may look stronger possibly with the new Baptiste. My assumption is flexible AoE healing power might make aggressive comps better, whereas more intense single target healing from Baptiste, they're kind of reconfiguring his playstyle a bit, might help Orisa more. I always thought it was a little weird that Baptiste was like a insane Reinhardt comp character once they reconfigured his healing power a few patches ago. Now I think they're pushing him a bit towards being synergistic with Orisa more, or maybe he's just better with all tanks more. I'm not exactly sure how I fall on that. My early impression is that the aggressive rush synergy of Bap is taking a small hit, and the poke heavy range single target approach comps, the poke comps, are getting a bit of a buff. This might result in a bit of an overkill effect, like perhaps the Baptiste rework was all Orisa needed in order to push that. On top of that, also getting the Halt buff perhaps has a bit of a compounding effect, especially when you combine with this next nerf. Yes, your eyes don't deceive you, Reinhardt players. He's down to 500 health again. I'm really interested in the logic that they're going through with this, because now Orisa gets buffed. He used to have 100 more health than she did, so that meant he could play in the Brawl playstyle better, but very quickly it can turn where you might as well just play Orisa instead of Reinhardt in a rush style. In the Overwatch League, there was versions of Orisa being the main tank in rush, and the moment you start to make Rein bad at that, then you might as well just play with Fortify and the extra health, because the gap between them is such where that's better. Now, keep in mind, Rein does still retain the damage that he received in those subsequent buffs, so he'll still be good at confirming the kills, but I'm just a little bit worried that his playstyle falls once he doesn't have that extra armor health to swing around, and I think that was so important to his playstyle. So I'm just a little confused on how they're trying to take this and what they want Rein to be, because I assume their logic is that Baptiste now heals more on a single target, so therefore the synergy with Rein might be too oppressive, but I kind of don't mind that part of it. Like, it's kind of neither here nor there to me, but that I'm assuming that's why they think they need to take it down, because it was the Bap Rein comps that were so good. But from my point of view, why was Bap strong with Rein to begin with? Like, why isn't it our expectation that we get Ana in that style of comp instead of Bap? Like, that would be a better playstyle for me, rather than Bap kind of being this do-everything support character. So that's just my opinion, but we'll see the feedback they get on this. It's an experimental card, so it doesn't have to go to live necessarily. Okay, this next one, it's a little difficult for me to make sense of, because we just feels like we're going back and forth on how we want these interactions to play out. But now, Roadhog's damage is going up from 6 damage per pellet to 6.6. In effect, this is going to change his max single target damage from 150 to 165, and then to double that if you do get headshots, that goes from 300 to 330, so a 30 damage increase on the headshots. Now, keep in mind as well, and I believe that this version of Reinhardt is the updated version you would anticipate. I mean, that's all of his armor health gone. Boom, went to the head. Like, the problem I had with some of the Giga Hog patches was that he made other tanks just feel unplayable with how easily he rolled over them. And now that we combined this with Rein has less armor health, it feels pretty easy to like two-shot a Reinhardt if you are able to hook him in. I get confused because I'm like, well, who do we like to win this matchup? I kind of liked it as D.Va that I could face tank Hog a bit. And with the half of her health being armor, she still can do that, I would say. But Rein getting an armor nerf means that he can die in 2 shots if you get headshots, I think. and D.Va will take 3. So it means main tanks are worse against Hog than before. So perhaps only like D.Va will feel strong against it. I mean, like, look at this. All his armor is just gone. And you might say, well, that's fair. That's how it should be. And now he'll get ultimate a little bit faster by farming it. Now he'll very easily win some poke battles against certain DPS where his range damage is going to be better, like a character like McCree, for example, really strong in the metagame right now. With a little bit more poke, maybe Hog can get a magical 2-shot on him if I hit that correctly. My Hog is pretty bad, so I might not be able to find the magic range, but getting it to air burst like that perfectly, maybe you have the damage to do this, to like dominate that ranged battle. Either way, at super close range, you were killing this guy with the hook melee combo. But extra damage on the pellets means it's even more forgiving on squishies, so that you'll be able to roam around and be able to handle them pretty easily, even when you're missing. That's kind of the issue I have, is that when he has more damage, he's able to roll over the front line a little bit, and then also forgivingly destroy squishies. That's the part, both of those I kind of just, I'm not a huge fan of. And it kind of changes, especially on these like wonky hitbox characters who sometimes can be difficult to follow up on. I know Hog players are very particular on how they want this interaction to work, but I think this might be a little bit too much for my tastes. However, at the same time, he's still in the back of his hand has this ultimate, which I think is just completely over the top and ridiculous. So I kind of think they should try to rebalance Hog in a similar way to how they've been trying to rebalance Baptiste. But this is the way they're going. More damage for you, more one-shots. The Hog meta continues. Well, at least in ranked. I think he's way too strong in ranked and like useless at higher tiers. I think this is a higher tier change that kind of is going to be felt in the ranked environment more because of just how forgiving he's going to be to full out carry team fights. Final change now to Sombra, whose fade time when entering or exiting stealth has now been reduced from 0.75 to 0.45 seconds. So quite a bit zippier. That kind of annoying delay in between coming in and out of stealth is going down. And that's going to matter against certain duels, certain fights. I think perhaps more so for the average tier of play as opposed to the higher tiers. At higher tiers, Sombra can be incredibly oppressive because of the teamwork potential that she has. But at most levels of ranked, she just feels like a budget version of another DPS you could pick to get kills easier. So being able to come out of stealth more quickly means that this target is going to have less time to react to me. So if you're up against like a Widowmaker, for example, with that reduced health, you're going to have a much easier time just pouncing her and securing very important duels that you need from your DPS position in ranked. Whereas in a full team environment, she operates more as a teamwork character, a disabler that everyone can utilize. Another thing that they've changed is the movement speed bonus has gone up from 50 to 60. This is something they've played around with quite a bit. I now have the reverse opinion of this one, where this is the kind of change that I think matters way more at the higher tiers, because the time gap and downtime you have matters so much at higher tiers of play. Where can you get to that certain spot? Do you get the scouting? Do you get where you need to be? And they're going to be searching for the Sombra anyway while in stealth. So that whole metagame changes a little bit. In ranked, your Sombra downtime almost is directly proportional to the player on it, not this ability, right? Like oftentimes when I see players have Sombras in their games or playing as her, they have far too much downtime just kind of going on the wildest flanks, when really you kind of want to find areas to have uptime on the character, and whether or not that is nerfed or buffed is kind of irrelevant. It's like a lot of players will hide behind the team waiting to play and waiting to influence the fight for too long, and then all of a sudden their team gets run over, right? So I don't think that changes too much, but the first buff definitely means you're gonna be able to pop out and cap a fool real quick. So that's it for the patch notes for today. I'd expect some of these to go live. I did get confirmation, is this going to go into the Overwatch League? And the answer was that the current tournament will finish and then they'll go on to the next patch. So the previous patch is what Owl is going to use for a while, and it would be my recommendation that they hold this experimental a bit and make a final call on it closer to that next cycle. But perhaps we can talk more about that later, because I think we're going to learn a lot from the Overwatch League in the next couple weeks on what this patch even is, and I'd rather us not buff or nerf things before we learn more about it. But That's one man's opinion. Let me know yours in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave it a like, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys next time.